In today's episode, we have a bit of nostalgia. This is a 2008 regular MacBook, and it was a bit of a weird time because this coexisted with the polycarbonate MacBook. Both of them were called the same thing, the MacBook. This got the unofficial title of being the Unibody MacBook, but thankfully Apple kind of fixed their mistake the next year by calling this the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and then the new Unibody polycarbonate MacBook, the just MacBook. Eventually, Apple reintroduced the regular MacBook as the ultra-portable and ultra-thin thing that introduced us to the butterfly keyboard back in 2015. What fun that was, and now it's dead again. So, this is nostalgic to me because I actually owned the big brother to this machine once upon a time. The 15-inch 2008 MacBook Pro, which has the dual GPUs. This one is notable for actually having a better integrated GPU than most machines at the time, because back then, Intel's integrated solutions were not that good. They were really terrible. So, this machine has a 9400M in it. It was really good. It performs pretty well to this day, shockingly. So, by that, I mean, I've tested this thing on YouTube, and it does play back standard def videos pretty alright, whereas a lot of machines from, like, the same era do struggle quite a bit, especially the Core Duo machines. But these machines also, I've actually played back 1080p video from my Plex server, and it does it perfectly fine. I was very shocked about that. And it does local 1080p perfectly fine. So, all around, it's a very cool little machine. But today we are going to go through it from a hardware perspective, fire it up, and have some fun with it. And, well, let's see what she does. So to begin, we are going to look at the ports, because unlike current MacBooks, we actually have ports. We have a MagSafe port, which is rumored to be coming back to the MacBook, which, if it does, thank you, Apple. That was like one of the big innovations that you guys did, and then they just threw it away with the new MacBooks. It's kind of conflicting because they threw it away for USB-C, and I'm all for standards compliance and all that, but MagSafe was really one of those few things where it's like seeding a standards compliant connector for the innovations that this brings, acceptable. Anyway, I digress. We have an Ethernet port, real Ethernet port, gigabit, I believe. I have not tried it. Actually, I've not tried a speed test on it, is what I mean to say. I have tried this for configuring my network because this actually worked when my 2020 M1 MacBook did not, and it worked well enough for that. 2 USB 2.0 ports, a mini display port, audio in, audio out, and Kensington lock. Go to the front here, we have our little catch for the lid, and shockingly, despite this thing's age, the lid is still in perfect alignment. The lid usually falls out of alignment over time, and it's really easy to adjust. You just need to pull the back panel off and unscrew the lid and loosen it, and then just realign it, then tighten it back down. Very easy to do. It's not that hard. But it does fall out of alignment over time, but this one, no, it's in perfect alignment. Very shocking. We have what's hidden by the chassis here. Very, very, very fine perforations in the metal here hide the sleep light, which tell you if it's sleeping or not. And we can see those later when I start it up. And we have an IR window, which stuck around until 2012. To some extent, I kind of do miss that a little bit, but on the side, we have a CD drive, and I know UXW Bill will probably not agree, but in these days, I would say a CD drive now counts as a real computer. Well, the way we're going, we're looking at headphone jacks being real from real machines too. Then we have the hinge, which hides all the antennas for the wireless system. So, on the bottom, you may have noticed that there is kind of a cool little thing here. This hatch comes off, as you can see from the seam here. So if we put this little button in here, flip the latch up, opens like a little door, and we get our hard drive, which comes out with one screw, and I had to put this one in myself because it didn't come with a hard drive, and this is a 750 gigabyte Toshiba hard drive. I know Toshibas aren't all that great, but It's what I had on hand. And the battery, which, got a little tab here. There's your battery. Pretty cool little design. But wait, where's the RAM? Well, if you just remove these 4 screws here and these 4 down here, this panel just pops off, kind of like it would on the newer MacBooks. Well, not newer as in up until the 2016 MacBooks, because the 2016 MacBooks have some weird bottom panel that has to be like slid upward or something, and I haven't taken one apart yet. Hopefully don't plan to, but I remember when Ryan did his, it was just some bizarre ritual that really kind of sucked. But these, you just take these screws out, there's a couple of catches in the center or somewhere in here, pop it up, all comes out perfectly fine, and you've got 2 RAM slots right here, where they would be in the regular MacBook. And that's how you upgrade your RAM. I've already upgraded this RAM outside of the video. I bumped this thing up to 8 gigabytes of RAM because at the time Apple would tell you that this thing only supported 6, but actually people found that if you put 8 in here, it works with all 8 perfectly fine. So what's kind of cool too, bit of a sidebar here, is this latch. Good things are copied, thankfully, because if we come over here and grab one of my machines here, covering up my service tag, because, you know, I've heard of people being able to do nefarious things with those. You see we have a similar latch here, and if I actually put this aside, I can just remove the latch, and there's my battery. There's where the SATA hard drive would be, because this uses PCIe SSDs under this cover, and also upgradable RAM under this cover. Hey! But if I just bring this latch over a second time, there's my battery. Glad Dell kind of took this design and ran with it when Apple abandoned it. Very nice gesture on their part. So that done, let's go ahead and see the 2008 MacBook. Now, another thing I forgot to mention when we were giving it the hardware tour is we have another artifact that you don't see on newer MacBooks anymore, and that's the battery gauge. This is the original battery, I might add, and it's still holding a very good charge considering how ancient this thing is. So I'm going to go ahead and just crack this thing open, and we're going to just power it right up. And I don't know if you can see it, but could have kind of seen the sleep-wake light in action, but I will show it off at a later time, just in case. Now, this thing's role in my fleet is actually quite essential, because, you see, right now my only Mac is an M1 MacBook Pro, and the M1 MacBook cannot run some command line utilities due to the security structure of the M1 and Big Sur. Most notably, you cannot install USBs from Big Sur, or at least on the M1s you cannot, because there is a utility bundled with a lot of the Mac App Store installers called Create Install Media, and you can't use that on the M1. It just will not let it run. So this machine has been upgraded to Mavericks because that is the first release of macOS to support that command without throwing an error. So the reason why that is such an important feature to me is because, of course, this machine shipped without a hard drive to me. Well, I say shipped, it was given to me. But it came to me without a hard drive, so I had to install macOS by myself with no help. And the problem with that is that Apple doesn't necessarily sell Snow Leopard anymore, and that's what you need to install macOS from scratch on these machines. There is no internet recovery for these older machines, so you can't just connect it to the internet and be like, oh, it'll pull down a version of macOS and just do it all by itself. No, that doesn't work with these older machines. And I went through hell and back trying to get an install USB or an install DVD to work on this machine. Eventually, I was able to do it with my M1 MacBook by just burning the DVD through disk utility with an external DVD writer. So, being able to create install media from USB is just something that is so stupidly handy and something you take for granted. Now, I should mention I'm being a little disingenuous here by not mentioning that, in fact, you can create install media on Big Sur / the M1, but only for Big Sur. you can't go any earlier than that, and this machine obviously is not going to run Big Sur, so kind of up the creek without a paddle. So let's go ahead and get ourselves a little zoomed in here. Good about this Mac, we'll see what we're dealing with here. Mavericks 10.9.5 with a 2 GHz Core 2 Duo and 8 gigs of RAM. Now, what I think is interesting, I could be misremembering this, is one of the fun things about the polycarbonate MacBook that ran alongside this boy here is that it actually had a faster CPU in it. I believe it was a 2.4 and this is a 2.0. I could be wrong. I could very well be wrong on that, and I could be misremembering because I'm just quoting from the memory banks here, but I do remember the lineup being a little bit weird at the time. So we go to more info, we get the modern about this Mac that we see in newer versions of Mac OS. We can go to displays, and there we see our 9400M that makes this thing so good. We see it again with the display of 1280 by 800. This is one of the better displays. Color quality is so much better than just anything in the market at the time. The colors look deep, and I almost thought these were IPS panels. I legit thought they were IPS panels until I found out that Apple didn't ship IPS panels in these machines until the 2012 MacBook Retina. So very, very impressive display quality for just a TN panel. Here we have the hard drive that I've yet to name for some odd reason, but I don't think I really care. And we have the super drive, which does work, thankfully, because a lot of these super drives get kind of grungy and they just quit working. I probably should invest in like a DVD cleaning kit at some point, so that way it's like I can actually clean these drives without having to dismantle them. But thankfully this one is in really good condition. Memory, if it'll let me click it, 4 gig. There's your proof right there that this machine can actually handle 8 GB. And if we go back a little bit, if we go to, oh, I'm dumb, I need to go back to the same place I was just at. System report. Now, unfortunately, unlike the 15-inch machine, this does not have Firewire. Firewire would have been useful to have on this machine because, honestly, my PowerBook G4, which is my main Firewire machine, it's getting a little bit tired and I don't want to push that thing too hard. So, having this be a Firewire box would have been nice, because I do occasionally use Firewire for, interfacing with these older iPods. But, you can't get everything, I guess. So if we go down to power, we can show off the battery here. And unfortunately, I do not have coconut battery on here. I had it on here for a minute, but I ended up deleting it because it's like I don't need it anymore. But this machine has a very impressive battery for being as old as it is. As far as I know, this is the original battery. And we're looking at 489 cycles, which is just ridiculous to think about, because these batteries, I think, were only rated to 400 before being considered consumed by Apple. So it still runs perfectly well. As you can see, we've been running off the battery the entire time in this video. Pretty impressive. Actually, as impressive as, my original run iOS devices here, because these both, oh, this is probably, yeah, they're both not powered up, but whatever. But both of these still hold a pretty good charge. I dread having to replace those batteries when they do go off, though, but I do have the experience to do so. But I believe last I checked it with coconut battery, the battery health was about either 77 or 82% in that neighborhood. Goes up and down, whereas the charge goes up and down. But that's the general area, and Apple would consider that consumed, but it makes the machine run for a couple hours, and that's all I really care about. So, yeah, this machine doesn't see a lot of use, so I'm totally fine with the battery being, well, partially consumed. So, that's really it for this video. Let's go ahead and demonstrate that sleep-wake light. As we can see here, very well hidden by this thing being perforated so finely that the naked eye can't see it. Soon it goes into that breathing motion, as we can see. This is very nice. I kind of miss that from newer machines, but simplicity marches on, I guess. Anyway, that's it for this video, and as always, hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys later.